Hey there, welcome to Craftcentral Designs. Today I have for you coastal theme decor blocks. One with a wood cutout shell, the other with a natural scalloped shell. These are beautiful to add to any coastal theme decor, especially awesome for bathroom coastal decor. So easy to create, so fun, and so pretty. Welcome to all to my channel today. If you're not currently a subscriber, I hope you will consider becoming one. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content, and as always, leave me your questions and comments. Okay, let's get busy creating these coastal decor blocks. These are the last of my series of decor blocks. And I saved the coastal for last. All right. This wood cutout shell is very pretty. And I got it in the wood department at Hobby Lobby. It's around 4 inches wide and it fits very well, 4.5 inches, something like that. And it fits very well on the wood dowel. And we're going to be covering that wood shell with a napkin with a beach scene on it. So I showed you there a wooden dowel. You'll need a 6-inch wooden dowel if you use the wood blocks from Hobby Lobby. Those are 2 inches, and that is the wood block with the sharper corners as opposed to the rounded corner ones, which I also use. But for this one, I'm using the squared block. Now, that one is from Dollar Tree. The difference is the wood is very, very thin. That's the rounded one if you want to use that one. That's from Hobby Lobby. But the one that I just showed you before from the Dollar Tree, that's a 2.25 inch. It's a very nice wood block, but when you go to drill through it, the dowel, because it is hollow, is going to drop down to the bottom. So you'll need a longer dowel. So you could pick up a 12-inch dowel and just cut it with the miter shears so that will be the proper height inside of the block, or you could use the blocks that are solid from Hobby Lobby and just use a 6-inch wood dowel. Okay, so I have this napkin here. It's a very pretty little beach scene. I think I picked these up at Home Goods, but I have also seen them on Amazon. Now, I was considering other ones which just weren't quite right for the shell, but you could use any type of napkin that you like. This one is so pretty, but the shells were on the napkin were a little bit too big to fit on that wood shell. You could also do these in floral. I mean, it depends on what vibe you want for your shells, but you do you, or you could paint it. I mean, that's completely up to you. I have a Celebrate ribbon here, a 1.5-inch wired, very pretty burlap in white. I also have a light blue and white striped wired ribbon, 1.5 inch. Again, that's a Celebrate ribbon, one of my very favorite ribbons to use for projects. I have this multi-pack of little wood cutouts that came from the spring section at Hobby Lobby. And there's some little cutouts that I'm going to use. There's some shells. As you can see there, there's a little seahorse and a very cute little crab. I'm going to use the crab and the seahorse and the shells. Now I'm going to be placing those on the sides of the block. You'll need Mod Podge. I'm doing the heat method to put my napkin on. You can do that or not do that. You could also use a dry iron with no steam. Up to you. I'm going to use Snow White Waverly chalk paint to paint my dowel and my block and my shell. Now I have a rotary cutter there. I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. And you could choose to do this or not do this. What I was trying to do here, those lines on that wood shell, I wished that they had had a little bit of a groove in them, but they didn't. They were perfectly smooth as they're purchased. But I wanted to try and insert my own little groove along those lines. So I had this idea to use my rotary cutter just to try to create a little subtle indentation so that when I put my napkin down on there, it would kind of go down into the groove and delineate the lines of the shell. Now, this worked okay. It wasn't phenomenal. So it's up to you whether you want to do this part or not. It did make a little bit of a difference, but not a tremendous amount. So it's up to you. I did end up taking a fine point paintbrush and painting some very subtle lines over the napkin once I had the napkin on there along those lines. So up to you. I was able to create a little bit of a groove though in all of the lines on that wood shell. Okay, so I definitely want to paint this shell because when I put the napkin down on there, I would like to put it down on a white surface. So I'm going to paint the front, the edges, the sides, and the back. I do cover the back of the shell, but I don't bother trying to create any grooves in the back. But I did put a napkin over the back. Okay, so you want to take a little piece of tape, a masking tape or painter's tape or whatever to help you separate the napkin. And this has a pretty little beach scene on it. It has a little bit of the ocean and some of that pretty tall grass that grows along the beach, along the coast. It has a little fence and it has some birds flying. You know, it's got some few nice little features of the ocean. So I thought it would be a pretty piece to put over the top of the shell with a little beach scene. So I was placing my napkin down on here to see exactly how much of that napkin scene I could get on that shell. And it turned out very well. So I am going to be placing Mod Podge on there and let that dry. But first I'm just going to generally cut out how much of that napkin that I'm going to use. And then I could go about, after I iron it on with my mini Cricut heat press, then I can go about, trimming up the edges. Okay, so everything is all white, and I'm ready to take my sponge applicator and put a nice layer of Mod Podge all over the front and the back of my shell. And then I'm going to let that completely dry. Then I'm going to go ahead and get my mini Cricut heat press ready to go. Heat it up so that when that's dry, I can just place my napkin down on there. Now you will need a piece of parchment paper. But I found out in a little bit of a parchment paper emergency. One time you could actually use like a piece of copy paper and it worked just fine. But I'm using parchment paper today because I have it. And I'm just going to go over my parchment paper with my mini Cricut heat press. I just wanted to be sure to get all the way out to all of those scalloped edges. And this turned out really, really pretty. Now, as far as it going down into the grooves, well, kind of it did. I did take one of my little spatulas and run it very gently along the lines to try and get those delineations of that scallop shell. It helped somewhat, but I did end up, like I said, taking a very fine point paintbrush, and I used a little bit of white acrylic paint, and I just, did a little bit of a paint line as well. Now you can see that it made a little bit of a difference. Again, this is totally up to you. This is like, me being me, really, with the detail. Nothing new there. But I'll always go a little bit extra to create a look of something that I would like to see on a piece. So here you see me doing it right here. Okay, you can see that you can see the lines just a little bit. Again, up to you. So I went around my piece and I cut off the excess with my scissors. Now I'm just taking a nail file here, a little abrasive nail file, and going around and cleaning up all the edges. Now I found that after I did this, I really scuffed up the area that I already painted on the edges in white. So I did go around with a little fine point paintbrush and touch all that up. Okay, so I found the very center of my wood block, and now I'm going to take my drill. Now, if you don't have a drill, you could try and do this with a Phillips head screwdriver. You're going to have to work at it, but you should be able to create a hole. Just got to choose a drill bit and a Phillips head screwdriver that's going to accommodate the size of your dowel. Now I'm going to use a little bit of wood glue here. I use Gorilla Wood Glue, my favorite. And I'm going to pop it down into the hole. Now the blocks that I use are solid. So I drilled down, I want to say around 1/4 inch. Maybe not that deep, but around that. Just enough to get that dowel to sit down in there. And I give it some glue to hold it nice and tight. And I find that that's all that's really necessary with these blocks. I'm going to paint the whole entire block, dowel included, and the bottom with Snow White Waverly chalk paint. I'm also going to paint the little pieces that are going to embellish the sides of the block. Now you could paint those pieces however you want. I actually added a little bit of light blue and blended a little bit of color into all of my pieces. Now I did the delineation lines with the white paint there, as I mentioned. And here's my crab and my shell. You could see that I have a little hint of that light blue in there. So there's my little crab. He's very cute. And my seahorse is very cute too. I just did a little blending with just a tiny dab of light blue mixed with my Snow White Waverly. And I painted those up. Like I said, you could do yours however you like. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my shell on my dowel. And I just place it on there. Sorry, it's just a little bit out of frame, the top of it. But making sure that my dowel is not peeking up over the top of my shell. And I put Aleene's Tacky Glue on there. And I put a clip on it. And there you see it there. You can also see the white lines that I created. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit off to the side to dry. Now I'm going to create a very, very small little bow to go on my block. Now you can, do this step or not do this step. I love bows. And I think this ribbon is absolutely perfect for this block. It's a very pretty, as you can see, light blue and white stripe. This is an excellent ribbon from Michaels, this Celebrate ribbon. I made a very small 2-loop bow. I want to say the size of my loops they're only about maybe 3 to 3.5 inches, so very small. but it's a wired ribbon, so it's awesome in that it's going to hold its shape. And look how pretty that is. I also have this beautiful white burlap. Now, I very typically use burlap ribbon on my coastal pieces. I don't care what it is. I generally use it, a wreath or whatever the case might be. So I'm going to include a burlap on here. I love the texture for this coastal piece. And again, this little bow is going to be very, very small. This ribbon is also wired. I'm using a 26 gauge wire to place down over the center of my loops, and I pull it very tight in the back and twist. Cut off the excess and bend the wire down. I'm going to be gluing this on to my dowel and the top of my wood block. I leave a little bit of a tail, maybe a couple of inches, maybe 2 to 2.5 inches, and you'll see me later cut these tails, and I'm going to cut them in like an angle. Now, I'm going to use one of my little wood pieces that I painted with just a little hint of that light blue that I used on the shell, and that's going to look very pretty sitting on the center of my bow. Now, my other wood block is all natural shells. I'm doing this one in wood, the other one in natural. So if you're a person who loves coastal, and I know there's a lot of you out there, especially for some reason we love to do our bathrooms in coastal. Why is that? I'm not really sure, but it's very, very common. And it's such a pretty, pretty look. For a bathroom, yes, I love decorating a bathroom. Okay, so I put my white burlap over the top of my blue and white striped. And I'm going to cut my tails a little bit shorter than the tails of the blue and white stripes so that they would show as well, you see there. And I put those two bows together. Matching up the centers, aligning them. Now you see my little shell there and the little hint of blue shading on there. And I'm going to glue that right to the center of my bow. And this is going to look really, really pretty on this piece. Now that shell, as I mentioned, I got that, I did mention that, right? Yes, I got that at Hobby Lobby. And yeah, they're only like a couple dollars maybe. And it's in the wood aisle. Okay, so now I'm going to take my blue and white striped beautiful ribbon and wrap it around my block. So I'm going to start that process in the back, leave my seam in the back. Now you can see I covered the back of that shell. I didn't put any white lines. I just didn't think it was necessary. I knew that dowel was going to be going right down the center, and really this piece has most definitely a front side. Okay, so I'm going to just here and there put a dab of hot glue to hold on my ribbon, and I make sure that I put it nice and snug wrapped around that block. Now for my other little painted wood embellishments, I'm going to put those all the way around that piece, one on each side. And see how pretty this is coming together? It's just got nice, soft colors, very pretty. And let's see how nice that looks. It really picks up the blue in the shell scene there. I love this piece. I'm keeping this one for myself. Okay, so I decided, again, you've seen me do this before, but I like my bow kind of facing the left side, not directly under the shell. You could put yours wherever you like it. I am going to place mine kind of sitting up against the dowel and perched right on top of the block. Now, I put a blob of hot glue there, pressed my bow up against my dowel and against the top of the wood block, and then I put a couple of dabs of hot glue underneath each of the loops of the bow, just to hold everything nicely in place. Okay, now I'm deciding where I'm going to put all of my embellishments. And I decided to put one of the shells that I painted on the front, and I put my seahorse on one side and my very cute little crab on the other side. And in the back, I put the starfish wood cut out. And that's it for this piece. And I have to say, this was fun. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's so, so pretty. I just used some Aleene's tacky glue to glue everything on. There goes my little crab that is so cute. My starfish in the back. And then my seahorse on the last remaining side of the block. I think this would be a really cute gift as well for someone who really enjoys coastal. It's very, very popular in where I live. I live in Florida, and we just love our coastal vibe in Florida. A lot of coastal decor goes on here, and I'm just on board with that for sure. I always have at least one room that's got a lot of coastal. Okay, now here is a natural scallop shell. I want to say it's around 4.5 to 5 inches wide, about the same tall. Now, I wish I could say that because I live in Florida, I could just find these shells on the beach, but I can't. I have to go to a shell shop, or Amazon has any kind of shells you could want. So if you want to look for shells on Amazon, just put in a search for scalloped natural shells, and you'll see all kinds of options to purchase. Now I have some other natural shells as well. I have some starfish, a couple of different kinds. I also have some miniature starfish. I'm going to put a couple of those on, right there. And I'm also going to put one in the center of my bow. Then I also have some of these little tiny baby, they're kind of like conch shells. And I'm going to create like a little arrangement in the middle of my bow that I'm going to put on this piece. Now this piece I'm going to do in kind of a natural color, like an off-white. So I'm using a plaster, and I'm going to paint my shell, which is a Waverly color chalk paint. I'm just going to paint my whole shell because I want it to be like a creamy color. Now what you see on my table there is a container of half pearls. Now I've been using these for like a couple of years now, but I know that I got these as well on Amazon. And they are super tiny shells. And when I tell you that the tiniest half pearls are about the size of a head of a straight pin, that's how small they are. But they have varied sizes, but they're all small half pearls. Now, I love to put pearls on shell designs that I do in crafting, and I'm going to do that on this one as well. Now, I'm I have my craft tweezers there, and I have my quilling glue applicator. And the reason why I like using that is it gives me the tiniest dab of glue. And this enables me to put a dot of glue and then drop my half pearl on there with my crafting tweezers. Now, you might think this is very tedious, but honestly, it did not take that long. So I put some around the edge of the top edge of my scallop shell. And then at the base of the shell, I used the tiniest of the tiny. It's almost reminds me of like a glitter. That's how small they are. So they create like this really pretty just layering of the tiniest of tiny pearls. And it really has a very pretty effect. So if you're interested in this, I'm sure I got these on Amazon. But you could also put really small half pearls that you purchase at Hobby Lobby anywhere on this shell as well. Or if you don't want pearls at all, you could skip that part. Maybe you want to just paint your shell and maybe do some shading along the lines of the shell. I mean, that's up to you. But I'm going to decorate mine with pearls because I absolutely love doing that. Okay, now you can see how I did the upper part of my shell. Now what I'm doing is taking some Mod Podge because these are just too small to even pick up with the tweezers. That's how small they are. I don't even know how in the world they produce or manufacture those pearls. They're so tiny. And then I kind of just take my fingers and sprinkle them and drop them into the Mod Podge. And it creates a really pretty effect. Okay, so I got this very pretty textured, it's kind of like an pearlish finish. The color is definitely like a off-white creamy pearl opaque color. Very pretty. So I'm going to cut a strip of that with my paper cutter. Of course, you could do this as well with scissors. Just measure it out properly, about 2 inches. And I cut a strip long enough to wrap entirely around my block. Now, my block I painted with that plaster chalk paint as well, because I want everything to be cohesive and match. So I'm going about putting on my scrapbook paper now. And I'm using my Aleene's Tacky Glue, carefully placing that on there so I have a nice application of that paper on my block. Now on the sides of my block, I'm keeping everything natural shells on this piece. Now, another option is if you live in any kind of coastal area where you have access to shell shops, I have that. Whenever I have a chance, I love to stop in there because, it just sparks all kinds of ideas for creating coastal decor. But they have like such a great selection as well. But, like I said, Amazon has anything you want. Starfish, scalloped clamshells, sand dollars, whatever. Just put in a search. I guarantee you'll come up with so many options of stores for whatever it is you have in mind, including different sizes. So yeah, if you want to create this piece and you don't live near any place where you could pick up shells, sometimes you can find shells at a craft store. Sometimes you can even find shells at Home Goods. But to be very specific to what you need, if you prefer, just go on Amazon. Okay, now I'm going to put my shell on my wood dowel. Now, because of the configuration, the shape of the shell, it's only going to hit my shell in two places, at the base and at the top. So I just put my Aleene's Tacky Glue on there. Now I'm going to put my clips on and just let it dry. Make sure it's nice and straight, by the way. Okay, now I have this creamy colored 1.5 inch Celebrate burlap ribbon. I love, as I mentioned before, burlap ribbon for anything coastal. There's something about the texture of it seems to go with coastal. Now I'm showing you here some of my little shells that I have. Those look like I probably got those on Amazon. Now those are my little tiny starfish. Oh, I love these so much. So I'm going to, again, create a very, very small bow. Again, the loops are maybe 3 inches. I leave a little bit of a tail. This one is only going to be one bow. I'm not going to do two and put them together, just one. Making some little loops, twisting my ribbon to have the right side up, fold it over and pinch it very tightly in the center. Take my 26 gauge wire, wrap it around, and I'm going to put one of those thicker starfish in the middle. There's different types of starfish. You'll see here in just a minute which one I use. And I'm going to put that in the center, and what I'm going to do is create, for the center of my bow, a kind of little shell, I guess you could say, arrangement. So, oh, there's the thunder. Yeah, well, I live in Florida, and every single day it does this. Every single day. Not my favorite time of year. Yeah, a lot of rain. So that was some thunder. You might have heard that. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to angle my tails, and I'm going to use some, let's see, I'm not sure if I used Aleene's or hot glue. Let's wait and see here. Now that's the starfish that I'm going to put in the center, and then around it I'm just going to put some little tiny, those little baby teeny weeny conch shell looking shells, and then some of those tiny starfish. Okay, so I used hot glue. I had to wait and see there. Okay, and so I'm going to place my starfish right in the middle. And so I'm staying, like I said, and totally with a natural shell theme here. If you're into that, which I am. And I'm going to take some tacky glue, and with little dabs of tacky glue, I'm just going to place some of those little shells around the bigger shell that I put there in the middle. That's completely up to you how you want to do the center of your bow, if you prefer a bow or if you don't. Another option would be not to place a bow and do a little miniature shell arrangement all over the top of your block, around where the dowel is inserted. You could just cover the top of your block with a layering of cute little shells, little starfish, little baby conch shells, any small little scallop shells that you might have. You could cover the top of your block with those as opposed to putting on a bow. So yeah, that's another idea if you don't want to use a bow. Me, I'm like, I have to put a bow on just about everything. So no surprise there. But I think that's a great option to put some shells on top of the block, covering up the whole top of the block with little miniature shells. Now, I really, really love these little teeny tiny little starfish. I'm sure I got those on Amazon. I've used those on so many projects, everything from picture frames to Christmas ornaments. Oh, I love them. Now they're very fragile, but if you place them so that they're protected on your piece, so that the points of the starfish are not, protected. Yeah, see how pretty those are? Yeah, they'll be just fine. So again, I'm just using Elaine's Techie to create this little shell arrangement in the center of my bow. And this is going to look very pretty, placed on top of the block next to the dowel, exactly the way I did the other one, facing a little bit to the left. Okay, now I decided that I'm going to place 2 of these little starfish, one on the front and one on the back. And then on the sides, oh, it's really starting to storm. You might be able to hear that. And on the opposite sides, I put a couple of those little small starfish. I put them on each side. So each side of the block has a starfish. 2 has the bigger, and then on the other sides, I put 2 each on each side. Now I'm gluing my bow down. Nice blob of hot glue and a blob underneath each of the loops. And that's it for this piece. It is so pretty. I think I'm keeping this one for myself as well. And look how pretty that is. Now, you do you and however you want to finish your shells, but this makes a great little addition to any decor grouping of coastal items. And here you have it, the finished pieces. And this is the last of my blocks. Yes, I've been doing a lot of these, but this is it for a while anyway, till probably the fall. But these turn out so pretty. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe if you are not currently. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. If you have any questions, of course, I'm here to answer them. And as well, if you could give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Okay, until next time, you all take care.